the largest deficit of any country in the history of our world.
And what if the trade war between two of the world's largest economies, China and the US, has been going on for more than 3 years? How does this trade war affect the goods made in China? And how does it affect you as a consumer and a citizen? Stay tuned to find out more. The trade war between the US and China is one of the most significant and complex geopolitical challenges in the 21st century. It has disrupted the global trade and economic order, affecting both the US and China as well as other countries. The trade war started in 2018 when the US imposed tariffs on imports from China, mainly in machinery and metals, to address its trade deficit and alleged unfair trade practices by China. China retaliated by imposing tariffs on imports from the US, especially agricultural products. The trade war escalated in 2019 when the US expanded its tariffs to cover almost all Chinese goods, and China lowered its tariffs on imports from the rest of the world. The trade war reached a partial truce in 2020 when the US and China signed a Phase 1 trade deal in which China agreed to increase its purchases of US goods and services, and the US agreed to reduce some of its tariffs on Chinese goods. However, the trade war has not been fully resolved, and there are still many unresolved issues and uncertainties, such as the enforcement of the trade deal, the fate of the remaining tariffs, and the future of the bilateral trade relationship. The trade war has multiple and interrelated causes from both economic and political perspectives. Economically, the trade war can be attributed to the trade imbalance between the US and China, the structural differences in their economic models, and the competition for technological leadership. The US has a large and persistent trade deficit with China, which reached $375 billion in 2017. The US accuses China of engaging in unfair trade practices, such as currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer, industrial subsidies, and market access barriers. The US also views China as a strategic rival in the high-tech industries that are of national importance, such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and telecommunications. Politically, the trade war can be attributed to the domestic pressures and interests of both the US and China and the strategic rivalry and mistrust between them. US President Donald Trump has used the trade war as a tool to fulfill his campaign promises, appease his political base, and gain leverage in the negotiations with China. On the other hand, has used the trade war as an opportunity to assert its national sovereignty, rally its public support, and accelerate its economic reforms and innovation. The trade war also reflects the broader geopolitical competition and conflict between the US and China as they vie for power and influence in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. The trade war has had significant and diverse effects on both the US and China, as well as the global economy and stability. The trade war has reduced the trade flows and economic growth of both the US and China, as well as other countries that are involved in the global supply chains. According to the World Bank, the trade war might have reduced the global GDP by 0.4% in 2019 and by 0.7% in 2020. The trade war has also increased the costs and uncertainty for both the US and China, as well as the global businesses and consumers, as they face higher tariffs, non-tariff barriers, and geopolitical risks. The trade war has also created winners and losers in different sectors and industries, depending on their exposure and competitiveness in the global market. For example, the US agricultural sector has suffered from the loss of the Chinese market, while the US service sector has benefited from the increased Chinese demand. The Chinese manufacturing sector has faced the pressure of relocation and diversification, while the Chinese consumer goods sector has gained from the trade diversion and substitution. The trade war has also had strategic and systemic implications for both the US and China, as well as the global order and governance. The trade war has undermined the multilateral trading system and the rules-based order, and increased the fragmentation and polarization of the global economy. The trade war has also intensified the strategic competition and confrontation between the US and China and increased the risk of military conflict and instability in the region. De-risking or decoupling from China is a growing competition and confrontation between China and the US, as well as their allies, in various domains such as trade, technology, security, and ideology. The US and its allies perceive China as a strategic rival and a systemic challenger that threatens their interests and values, as well as the global order and stability. The US and its allies have adopted a more assertive and aggressive posture towards China, imposing tariffs, sanctions, bans, and investigations on Chinese goods, companies, and officials, as well as increasing their military presence and activities in the Asia-Pacific region. China, on the other hand, has defended its national sovereignty and interests, retaliated against the U.S. and its allies' actions, and expanded its economic and diplomatic influence in the rest of the world. The trade war between China and the U.S., which started in 2018, is the most prominent and visible manifestation of the de-risking or decoupling process. The trade war has involved multiple rounds of tariff increases and retaliations, as well as non-tariff measures such as sanctions, bans, and investigations, targeting various sectors and industries such as telecommunications, semiconductors, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. The trade war has disrupted global trade and supply chains and affected the economic growth and welfare of China, the U.S., and other countries. The trade war has also intensified the strategic and technological competition and conflict between China and the U.S. and increased the risk of military escalation and instability in the region. The trade war has not been fully resolved, and there are still many unresolved issues and uncertainties, such as the enforcement of the Phase 1 trade deal, the fate of the remaining tariffs, and the future of the bilateral trade relationship. The trade war has also triggered a broader and deeper process of de-risking or decoupling from China, involving other countries and regions such as the EU, Japan, Australia, and India, as well as other domains such as finance, education, media, and culture. The trade war has also reshaped the global trade and economic order, creating new opportunities and challenges for China and the rest of the world. Chinese EV makers can overcome their challenges by experimenting in adjacent industries such as e-commerce, ride-hailing, and car-sharing. These industries provided new opportunities and platforms for Chinese EV makers to test and market their products, as well as to collect valuable data and feedback from customers. For example, Alibaba-backed Xpeng Motors partnered with Didi Chuxing, China's largest ride-hailing platform, to launch a fleet of Xpeng EVs for Didi's drivers and passengers. This helped Xpeng to increase its brand awareness, customer loyalty, and operational efficiency. Similarly, NIO, one of the most well-funded EV startups in China, leveraged its online and offline channels, such as its app, website, and NIO houses, to create a loyal and engaged community of EV enthusiasts and owners. This helped NIO to enhance its customer service, retention, and referrals. Another factor that helped Chinese EV makers to improve their performance was encouraging operational solutions such as lowering costs, increasing efficiency, and optimizing quality. These solutions were supported by the Chinese government, which provided generous subsidies, tax breaks, procurement contracts, and other policy incentives for EV makers and buyers. These policies stimulated the demand and supply of EVs in China and created a favorable environment for innovation and competition. For example, BYD, the largest Chinese EV maker, benefited from the government's support in developing its battery technology, which reduced its dependence on foreign suppliers and lowered its production costs. BYD also adopted a vertical integration strategy, which increased its control and coordination over its supply chain and operations. Similarly, Toyota Motor, another leading Chinese EV maker, focused on improving its quality and efficiency by adopting a lean manufacturing approach, which eliminated waste and improved productivity. The third factor that boosted Chinese EV makers' growth was doubling down on core technology, such as battery software and artificial intelligence. These technologies are essential for enhancing the performance, safety, and intelligence of EVs and for gaining a competitive edge in the global market. Chinese EV makers invested heavily in research and development, as well as in acquiring and partnering with leading technology firms and institutions to advance their technological capabilities and innovations. For example, Li Auto, a Chinese EV maker that specializes in extended-range EVs, acquired a stake in Beijing Deep Motion Technology, a startup that develops autonomous driving software. This helped Li Auto to improve its self-driving features and functions. Similarly, Tesla, the US-based EV giant, established a research center in Shanghai, where it developed its battery technology, which increased its energy density and reduced its costs. So, how will the trade war affect goods made in China? Will China be able to maintain its competitiveness and resilience, or will it lose its edge in market share? How will the rest of the world react and adapt to the changing trade and economic landscape? Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of our future videos. And don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and family. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.